Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media Production. Today, we are here to take your one-dimensional bass drum into the third, possibly fourth dimension. Today it's going to be a step-by-step journey from, honestly, what actually isn't a problematic or bad bass drum sound at all. It's just another one of these prescriptions that we tend to set and forget and go, that's what a drum sounds like. Never mind that it sounds the same through all the dynamics. It sounds the same if we bury the beater or not. There's nothing wrong with it, but surely there's more in there. Before we dive in, let's hear where we're at to start. The setup today on the drum is a UV EMAD on the batter, an EQ3 resonant with a port on the front. We have a pretty substantial pillow in there, and both heads are tuned to just above finger tight. I did finger tight on both, and then just a little turn with the drum key around. Sometimes we talk about this as being just above a wrinkle tuning or jaw tuning. There's a lot of terms for it, but this has been a very common prescription for a way to get a punchy, modern, set it and forget it kind of bass drum sound, and we're going to go ahead and step away from that today. I'm a person that likes to get some rebound off of the bass drum head in addition to using the spring on the pedal to manipulate it, so we're going to take the pillow out. There's something to be said for realizing that this is a huge drum and we're still going to get a lot of low end out of it even if we pitch the batter head up a bit. Let's go ahead and raise the tension on the batter head here, see what we get, and don't forget that the specific amount of tension on this head is not the big takeaway here. Your drums, your drum heads, your pedal, it's all going to vary a little bit. This is about going after what feels right for you. With this setup, now I'm getting a little more kickback from the head into the pedal. It feels a lot bouncier, and it's important to mention right here that if you are a player that prefers to bury the beater in the head, these wide open tunings are going to feel crazy and also not sound as good as they could. In order to allow the heads to move and resonate and for the drum to speak, we're going to have to get the beater off of the head so that they can do that and not have the majority of the low end crushed out by the pressure of the beater. The flip side of this is that the dynamics at a tuning like this are really dramatic. The softs sound soft, the louds sound loud, and it grows through all of that range versus the initial super low with a big pillow tuning where everything basically sounded the same. It just sounded like the same sound louder, and whether we buried it or not didn't make any difference at all. Next step is we're going to raise the tension on the resonant head a bit as well. This is going to give us more activity between the heads. They're going to get a lot more tone out of the drum, and the whole thing feels louder. These pitches are working for where we ultimately want to get to, and we need to make mention of the fact that we are strategically doing this without any muffling inside the drum because we want to be able to hear both whether or not the heads are in tune with themselves or to what degree, what pitches the heads actually are, and how they're interacting when we strike the drum across the dynamic range. Let's take a listen to where we ended up with the pitches on the batter and the resonant right now. These are substantially higher than we started out with, and that's scary for some people who are going for a modern bass drum sound, thinking that lower means lower. But the fact of the matter is that tuning the drum up is actually allowing it to generate some of the low mids and average lows rather than super subby stuff only that are going to both sit in the mix in a beautiful way and also project low end to the audience, whereas with a super subby drum that mostly has attack, that is not traveling very far. It's going to get into the microphones fine, but beyond that, we need a little more activity in the drum. This is crucial for any scenario where you are playing and the bass drum is not mic'd, because we want people to get the bass from the bass drum. And it took me a long time to figure this out. I went through a lot of iterations of tuning over the course of trying out different drums in my life. And at this point, this is where I start with bass drums. And if for some reason I need to go lower, I'll do that after the fact. Finally, we have come to how are we going to muffle this drum to get a punchy sound out of it? Well, what we're going to do is start relatively minimal with a folded up, fairly large towel. And what we're going to do is fold it into the drum and make sure that it is touching both of the heads with most of the towel on the batter and just a little bit on the reso. This is definitely a choose your own adventure kind of thing, depending on the size of your drum, the size of the towel. You will have to experiment a little bit to get exactly what you want. We are using a pretty big drum, so we're using a pretty big towel. Let's check out this drum as it sits now. Now we have very punchy tone. We have a very big sound. It's a lot louder. It has a little more sustain, but it's not out of control. It's not singing like it was earlier, and we're not fighting any basketball-y overtones in there anymore because of the addition of the towel. This also affords us the possibility of having dynamics, whether we bury the beater or not. We're going to get a big tone if we keep the beater off, and we're going to get a lot of sharp attack if we choose to press it in. This is very different than the initial muffled bass drum where burying it and not didn't really make any difference at all, and the tone of the drum was the same through the entire dynamic spectrum. This does not mean that the initial sound we started with is bad. Again, these are all tools for your tool belt for different scenarios. If you need to not have dynamic range in the drum, that's why I would choose that first one. If I want to have a lot of options and a little more range of expression, I would move towards something like this. This is not about validity, it's about having options and knowing how to get them. Now, check this out. Let's get rid of the towel and let's put the pillow back in, oriented exactly like it was at the first tuning, and see what it does to this tuning. Now, because there is more tension on both of the heads, we still have some dynamic range here that was not present in the initial tuning because the drum was tuned so low. What this means for us is that now we can bury the beater. It sounds fabulous. We can play off and it sounds a little bit bigger, a little bit warmer. This will be accentuated by microphones and depending on the space that you're in. But this is a heavily muffled drum that now has some dynamic range. And most importantly for me is also giving me rebound off of the head so that I can use the drum musically rather than thinking of just playing through it and relying on the spring to do the work for me. An added benefit of using a tuning like this is that if you happen to be a heavier hitter, really like lead foot, burying that beater, a higher tension on the batter with muffling is going to extend the life of your batter head because that tension is allowing that skin to receive all of that energy and turn it into sound. Whereas if it's tuned super low, just as we've talked about with tom heads in the past, it can't handle that amount of energy and it's getting dissipated and pitting out and breaking. And I have broken batter heads on bass drums before, but I haven't broken one in years. And I'm here to say it's because I changed the way I tune them. At long last, it's time for a back-to-back comparison of individual hits through all of these iterations. Thanks so much for coming along on this journey. I hope that some of these sounds were inspirational to you. And for anybody who the first thing they want to say is that they like the first sound better than the rest, that's totally fine. It's not about that. But we hope that the rest of it gave you a little bit of pause and might make you consider trying out some other options on your drum. Additionally, please follow the link to the Patreon below. It's the best way to help us continue to make this series. We have a lot of extra content on there. It's a great community and lots of options for people to join in and be a part of it. Lastly, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell for new episodes, and please do tell us if you are a very low tuner, a higher tuner, what you do in terms of your personal prescription for your drum, and if anything ever came along that made you really question what you were doing.